South Lake STEM News. In this episode, we're going to talk about germs. Microbes are creatures we can't just see with our eyes. So, how do we know they exist? One way is by looking through a microscope. Microscopes are instruments that use curved glass lenses to make things look bigger and clearer. You can see something as small as 1,000th of a millimeter with a laboratory microscope, like the ones we have at school. But since we don't have access to our microscopes at school right now, I'm going to show you later in this episode how to make one with things you might have at home. Now, microbes that make people sick are called germs. Now, scientists make bacteria and viruses grow on special plates called petri dishes. And later in this episode, I'll show you how we conducted an experiment here at home using petri dishes and taking a look at how many germs are around us. Now, not all of the things that grew on the petri dish were bad for us. Let's talk about that now. There's two different things that we're going to talk about, bacteria and viruses. The first we're going to focus on is bacteria. There are millions of bacteria in a teaspoon of pond water or a pinch of soil. There's about 5 million trillion bacteria alive on Earth, which together weigh more than all the plants and animals combined. Where do we find bacteria? Really everywhere. Wherever you look, you'll find them doing amazing things. So not all the bacteria we encounter are bad. Actually, some of it's really, really good, and we need that bacteria. There's bacteria that help plants grow. There's bacteria that help us digest food. Did you know a person carries about 4.4 pounds of bacteria in and on their body? Pretty amazing. Now, when you encounter a bacteria that isn't good for you, we have our immune system to help us out. Our first line of defense is our skin. If our skin becomes compromised, we might gain a fever, we might sneeze, we might cough, our eyes might tear up to help try and flush that bacteria out. Now, there are ways of avoiding getting infected by a bacteria, like washing your hands, not touching your eyes or your mouth. But if you become infected, your doctor might be able to help you out using medication known as antibiotic. Now, the same cannot be said for viruses. There is no antibiotic or medicine for a virus. So what is a virus? If you've ever had a cold, then you've been infected by a virus. Viruses are the simplest form of life and are much smaller than bacteria. And they're responsible for lots of different diseases, like the one we're experiencing right now, known as the coronavirus. So the common cold is a viral infection that gives you a runny nose, a sore throat, a headache. The average child catches 7 colds a year, which is more than any other infection. How do we pass it on? Well, if you notice here, this boy wipes his nose, gives a high five. She then, with her germy hands, eats her snack, and that virus goes into her mouth. She then gets sick. She sneezes, touches the door handle, and the cycle continues. There's ways to break this cycle. Eat well, sleep well, cover your mouth when you cough and sneeze, wash your hands often, and stay at home when you're sick. Now, right now, we're experiencing all of us staying home, even when we're not sick, because the coronavirus that's being spread right now spreads so easily and so rapidly. How do we fight a virus? Well, your body fights viruses like it fights a bad bacteria, with white blood cells. Now, our bodies can learn from an infection. So you've caught a cold one time, your body has sent out the white blood cells to help fight it off, and the memory cells learn what the virus is. So the next time you catch that virus, your body's able to fight it off right away. So though you can't take a medication, to fight off a virus, your body, using the memory cells, using the white blood cells, learn what a virus is. So up next, we're going to take a look at our experiment we did at home using Petri dishes. And we're going to see just how many germs are around the Leduca house. So what you see here are Petri dishes. This is what we used for the experiment to test what bacteria and germs are living around us here at the Leduca house. Let's take a look on how to conduct an experiment using Petri dishes. We had to conduct our experiment a couple of times. This one is the result of the first experiment, the first test. But this we had to cancel out. There was one variable in here that we didn't think about ahead of time. If you notice, there are 5 dishes that have a lot of growth and 5 that only have a little bit. This distinct difference was because I did some of the swabbing and Mr. Leduca did some of the swabbing. So 2 different people doing the test produced 2 very different results. So I decided to do the experiment again so we could get valid results. And the results were shocking. Now, I did not go out of my way to warn everybody that I was going to be doing it. So everyone just did their normal thing. We didn't clean extra. We didn't do anything different. And this is the result. Bacteria growth everywhere. My phone, Mr. Leduca's phone, Drew's hands, Bailey's paws, the handles throughout the house, the toilet seat. Now, remember, some of this is healthy bacteria that we actually need, but some of this isn't okay. So we went and conducted this experiment now for the 3rd time. And this was the result after having cleaned. We used Clorox wipes, we washed our hands, we sanitized. There's still some growth on some of the surfaces. Now, what I find very, very interesting, I'm not surprised to see growth on Bailey's paws. It's very hard to kind of clean. Now, Drew's hands and the sink handle both have a decent amount of growth. I had just cleaned that sink handle. However, Drew went to wash his hands after I had wiped off that sink handle. So Would that zinc candle still look the same if Drew hadn't just touched it? We won't know for sure, but I can make a guess. Now, Drew's going to demonstrate how to wash hands. And let me tell you what, it took him several tries to do this, which is evidence of he washed his hands but didn't wash them very well, touched the sink handle, and patched on those germs so easily. I had just cleaned that handle, and if you look at all the other things that I cleaned, they look pretty good. That sink handle probably looked pretty good until Drew came and touched it, just like that. So now let's take a look at Drew teaching us how to wash hands, and we're going to be looking at, with a black light, how we can easily contaminate and how you really, really, really have to scrub in order to get all of it off.
Today we will demonstrate why it's important to wash your hands. Now I'm going to use this to simulate germs on my hands. Now we're going to wash your hands. Remember, when you're getting your soap, remember to use the back of your hand so when everybody else goes to touch it, they don't get those germs on your hand. And you want to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds so you get all those germs off. Now let's inspect my hand washing job. Now our hands are clean, and it did take a few tries, but now that we've washed my hands, now that they're free of those orange germs, I've learned that you have to wash your hands a couple times, or at least well, before you actually get it clean. Thank you.
And now to show you how to make a microscope using the lens of a laser pointer, some putty, and your cell phone. Thank you for joining us for another edition of South Lake STEM News. Stay tuned for the next episode where we talk about robotics.